Okay, everybody. All right, this is awesome. We're making history here. This is the third in a series. We're on the Dog Brothers podcast, where we're going to talk about the East Coast camp that's coming up very soon. But this is the first Dogzilla podcast. He's never been on a podcast before. This is awesome. So, Mark Denny, take it away. Bring us up to speed.
Well, as I was looking to plan this year's camp, we had Benji, Eric, and me for several years. It's okay, time to start mixing it up a bit. And Lloyd and I have been working together and creating the RTW system. And I think, Mike, he is because he's out in Hawaii. He sometimes some of the younger generation doesn't know him as well. Although when he comes to the gatherings, the tribals, everyone's like, "Ooh, it's Dogzilla," and I know the work that he's shared a little bit of the work that he's done, and he's come up with some distinctive things, and I think also there's going to be additional synergy giving his work. How many years now? And were you in corrections, Mike?
33 and a half. I was a federal law enforcement officer with the Department of Justice, and then I was a correctional officer with the Bureau of Prisons. And it's similar to being a Marine, where first you're a Marine and you're a rifleman. So like if anything kicks off on federal property, we have to respond. And I was on the Enhanced Disturbance Control team out here in Hawaii, and there isn't a FBI SORT team. So anything that happened on federal property, we would have to deal with. On the mainland, I was on the disturbance control team that you often refer to as a special response team, but it's basically prison SWAT, it's DCT, disturbance control. Over here, we enhanced it because we started specializing in less than lethal munitions, and we got away a little bit from using riot batons and side batons and short batons, yet we still use some of it, but we started specializing, excuse me, I put my weapons back, in other forms of dealing with altercations, whether they're immediate or calculated responses.
Yeah, and so I was thinking that would, with the material that Lloyd and I are going to be presenting, I thought it would be, tremendous synergy to have you there. Lloyd has done a lot of research on the South African criminal things, and Lloyd, correct me if I'm wrong, you've gone into some of the South African prisons, yes?
I've done some visits, spoke with some people. I've spoken to a few gang members. I mean, you don't casually, walk up and say, "Hey, show me a few things." You've got to be introduced, and you've got to, through someone who they respect, and then but these are not educated people. They can't give you, shall we say, a clear education. You've kind of got to infer from a lot of what they tell you. You've got to watch and then really deduce from that. But yeah, so I've worked it a little bit, and had to, and also just watch it in my neighborhood growing up.
So I was thinking that, as you and I are introducing the RTW, it would be extra valuable to have Mike there interjecting, from his years of experience, mixing it up with bad people doing bad things.
Sounds like he's got a wealth of information, far more so than me or you, in terms of actual experience, knowledge, and practical applications of this stuff. So yeah,
I'm interested in the different ways you guys hold the knife, because I'm a cook and I work in food service. So typically most people hold a blade forward because we're cutting produce or meat and stuff, where you guys are holding the blade quite differently for killing.
Really good to meet you, Mike. And also you're in luck. I work for food. So, so we can do a trade.
Yeah, but that's an interesting point that Mike makes is, our method is principally ice pick grip, and, most people are using the knife in the hammer way. So,
in a sense, if you want to think of it historically, if you imagine a long spear, right? Let's say a yard of wood with the metal spear tip, right? If I hold it like this, right? This vertical section is the stabbing section of the spear, because I would plunge it this way, right? Think about it. So in a sense, it is stabbed like a spear would be. This portion is the knife, right? So when I'm stabbing like this, it's exactly as if I'm hitting with the club, or I'm, this is exactly the same as a hit with the club. But when I'm concealing it like this, it's effectively like I'm holding it as if I would stab with a spear. So there is that historical, cultural influence that's there. So it's not entirely divorced from the concept of a weapon forward. And it's derived from a longer weapon, but it's the silat mixed with the African systems. But yeah, Mike, I'll be happy to discuss with you, and then we can look at synergies, as Mark said.
Would this help people to train with?
That's interesting.
That's one of my blades, Mike.
That's an interesting concept.
Yeah, when I trained with Andrew Salite, we would hold two knives, one out of each end of the hand that way. And, one of the things he did to, let me see what I can do here, is that he was showing us that the thrust of the hammer grip was the slash of the ice pick grip, and that the thrust of the ice pick grip was the slash of the hammer grip. So this rotation in the shoulder joint going like this, he called central baston, meaning holding the stick in the center. But it was about teaching the meaning of the movement.
No, I see that. But Mike, to your point with that double-bladed knife, interesting concept, might have some value, but think of this. The weapon is hidden, it's concealed. It lies along my arm. It's much harder to remove. If you put a lever here, you could twist my wrist. Like this, it's much harder to remove. I can conceal it, move it close to my body, get it through gaps that I couldn't otherwise like this.
So more like this?
There's certain advantages.
Yeah.
A little closer to the bone. Yeah, something like that. Something of that nature, exactly. So I can do things with it. I can move it on myself, and I can move it through gaps that I couldn't otherwise get it through. So there's a few things, but yeah, it'll be interesting discussing with you. I mean, Mark says you've got great experience, and from what I've heard, I mean, you really know what you're on about.
Well, it's going to be neat to meet you, train with you, go from being a cook where I'm a butcher and a cook, and I always work with the blade forward, to now, an altercation picks up, and I start having to get busy concealing the blade, keeping it to where someone can't grab it and break my wrist and take it away from me, on me.
Oddly, historically, the Malays, if you look at the Malays who came with the Dutch as skilled artisans to South Africa back in the 1600s, they brought the knife skills because the black tribes didn't have knives. They had spears and shields, and they had the knopkieries, the sticks. But the Malays, when they filleted fish, they would use the knife in the same fashion. So the black tribes took the small weapon, but they wielded it more or less in the way that they have culturally used their other weapons. So it's kind of it's an interesting blend. But they learned it from people who use knives, I mean, like in the silat fashion. So very odd.
Well, that's interesting, because the knife that Mark sent me from Akita, my wife says is great for filleting fish.
Really?
The double-edged blade, she loves that knife.
Yeah, well, awesome weapon.
Yep.
Yeah, no, in designing the knife, I was looking for it to be usable with both grips, although it's principally an ice pick grip, fighting grip. And it's also talking what Lloyd was talking about a moment ago with the ice pick grip, the way that the blade can lay along the forearm. A few years back, for a few years, when I was doing seminars in Mexico, I trained the SWAT team at the prison for the state of Mexico, and I guess about 3 times. There's a video clip of the first time I was out there visiting them. They put on a demo for me, and I was showing the dog catcher versus prison sewing machine. And I remember one of the guys came up to me and he said, "What do you do when the guy's got the knife laid along his arm?" Thank you, Bob. I always good to be getting that up there. But it's just, they said, "What do you do if you have the knife? You have a guy who's slicing like this with the knife laid along the forearm like that." And I said, it's a prison. Basically, it's going to be point shank, isn't it? And he says, "Oh no, there's a lot of corruption and real knives get smuggled in." And says, "Well, that's an interesting additional layer."
Yeah. Well, one thing in the prison, like let's say I were like this, right? I got jammed, and I can't use the weapon very effectively necessarily here, right? I mean, those are things that I can discuss. But if I were here, for argument's sake, and I got jammed, I can then rotate. I can move this shoulder away so that my elbow, this side of my body's touching you. But now I'm free to use this down to the bottom. I can stab to your hip, to your leg, to your thigh, your groin, your bladders, your kidneys. Understand? So by simply opening up, I'm able to. This is a little harder, but from here I can start hinging at the wrist. I can use angles.
Let's remember that this is a podcast. We don't want to be.
Oh, sorry, yeah, my bad. Yeah, but it allows for articulation you wouldn't otherwise have with the hammer grip.
I do like where you went with that though, Lloyd, because it feels like grappling. It feels like jiu-jitsu when you're looking for the seams and the holes, like wherever that is. You're not going against force on force. You're finding the spots to get out, the weakest spots. But I like how you just demoed that. Look what's going to happen at this camp. Look at these theories. Well, this is pretty cool.
These ideas would be great to feed back in. I mean, look, we're working with some of the best people available, right? Highly experienced people, and it can only help us to grow and improve because new problems lead to new solutions.
Yeah, and it's I remember one time Mike showed me a diagram that one of the gangs had put together, laying out there like a football play for a hit that they were planning in the prison yard.
No kidding.
And Mike can fill in the details or whatnot, but it's like, okay, you're going to come in from this gate. The knife is the shank is going to be handed off here. Then these guys are going to come here, obstructing the approach. And then after the kill, the knife will get handed off this way. They had a very high level of seriousness. And so, whereas the RTW, it starts as a frontal system. And so, we're looking, what does the good person do to be a good porcupine? What does the good person do with a cranky crowd of scurrilous scum? How does the good person come forward against somebody who is younger, bigger, stronger, meaner? Whereas at the same time, in knife awareness, the prison thing is going to be much more about ambush. I'm thinking, it's not so much about frontal killing. A lot of you have heard my story about one knife teacher that criticizing another knife teacher, saying to me, "These guys are no good. All their attacks are from in front." So there's all these. So I want to place RTW in the context here, but we also, because we're, needing to understand how bad people think and operate, we need to be serious students of what bad people do. And so the Piper's, which is where Lloyd started out, there's a very deep and distinct thing there. And, and Mike has been around, people doing bad things for a long time as well. So I'm thinking there's going to be some tremendous energy there at the camp.
I believe that the tool sometimes dictates the structure, because whatever they compose the weapon out of, it might not be a blade, it might be an ice pick. And so they might have to use it more for puncturing, because it's just a straight shank, and it's not going to have anything on to cut, and they really are not going to hold it in reverse unless they do get into a close quarter ambush and they're just using your guys' ice pick grip that I've been seeing, where they're coming down into things. And so I've seen an array of weapons, and what I noticed, they usually use them differently depending on what they can get their hands on, what they made them out of, whether they took them out of a door frame or out of a bed, or even maybe they made them in metal shop. I mean,
Yeah, and and what you're saying there about sort of it being more point-oriented, Lloyd's Piper system, even though it's a knife, it's a cheap knife. So Lloyd's explained to me, he'll flesh out, is how it's more about stabbing than it is about slashing.
Yeah.
Lloyd?
Well, I think this would be a great opportunity to learn about the problem and the kinds of skills that the assailant that you might have to face would have, and then how we've developed a methodology for dealing with this person, right? So one, you're understanding the problem from a realistic point of view, and two, you're applying counters that have some degree of some likelihood of success, so that you can anticipate what he's doing or cut off what he's doing before he can launch it and go through him, right? And also utilize some of those ideas in your own defense, in your family's defense, to get out of the scene.
Exactly.
Well, let me jump in here. We got a little quiet moment. So that's some intense stuff. You're getting into some really heavy stuff here. Now, for average Joe who's going to come in, how do we now have an on-ramp for that person to start learning this without going full fire hose of, somebody wants to kill me today? But how does you introduce someone?
Let me jump in on that. I think that's a perfect question. And that's where, notice how I articulated what Lloyd and I are doing with RTW, is it's a frontal system. It is for a good person of zero background in knife could come to this camp, and he could walk away with the chupacabra structure, the RTW, and he will have something where with a small everyday carry, typical folding knife of 3-inch blade or so, you don't have to be walking around with, Bowie knives or, the various exotic knives that some of us in the martial art world get entranced with. Your basic folding knife, and that he has something that's going to mean that somehow something went wrong. There's a misunderstanding in the parking lot, or there's a couple of street jackals, who are looking to go predator on you. And he needs to put up a bubble. He needs to be able to, maybe his wife or his children are with him, that he has a structure that he's going to be able to handle and operate in a high adrenal state. He's not the kind of person who plays these games. He's a person who lives a normal, healthy life. But he knows that when he gets into this structure, it's going to be very hard for somebody to get a hold of him. He's got something that he can burst his way through a cranky crowd. And Lloyd said something in the previous podcast. He was talking about how other things he had seen. He mentioned people doing this, is that they're moving, they're trying to line up the opponents, is where the African thing, they're worried about limbs being grabbed. And so they work in structures where they're very close like this. And that was what we now call the full metal elbows. And similarly with the chupacabra, and again, it's like this. You're not going stay back, and then you get blindsided from somebody else. So it's a structure for a good person who wants to have something that he can walk away with, that even in a wild and crazy context, he's going to be able to keep himself from getting blindsided. He's going to be a porcupine. He's going to be able to burst through a crowd. He's going to be able to protect those who are with him. So that's what the RTW system has as its core. And as part of that, the conversation is going to wander into these other places as well.
Well, if I can perhaps add something to that. One, to see the threat in front of you, you have to have an awareness that that is awake, right? So one, you have to learn awareness, you have to learn the signs, you have to learn what to look for. So then A, it focuses your attention so that you have that time to prepare. And B, the way that RTW works is, as opposed to, get away. You have a solid structure, which is an attacking structure. It's inherently offensive and defensive, but it is designed to take initiative and move you. So there's focus. There's no indecision. There's no hesitation. You're taking initiative. You're moving. You're going on the blitz, and it's got defense built in. So you're not worried about defense. You are taking initiative. You are taking the fight to him, and it's not necessarily going to be a fight. It could be one, but you are making sure that you're shutting him down as fast as possible so he can't harm you or your loved ones as well. So you're minimizing potential risk.
I like that phrase about the defense is built in. I've never, that's what I was looking to do, but I've never articulated it that clearly.
And with some of the final point, with some of the innovations I've been doing with Mark, it's kind of got multiple attackers defense built in, but it's a very different concept to the JKD thing, dancing around, trying to line them up. It's got, I know this seems very counterintuitive, working and moving like this, but it's got that idea is partly inherent in there. And if you, let's say you lose your weapon or you can't access it, you've got a method of working with them, with multiples, to allow you to deal with them. And if you have a weapon added to it, it enhances it, it becomes a lot more lethal.
And that is, I think, one of the examples of what made for the synergy for what Lloyd was doing and what I was doing, and why our work has come together so well, is what he's demonstrating there, this structure. When he showed me this, I was like, wow, that is absolutely brilliant. You know, and it's out of a different idiom of a different thought process, you know.
Yeah.
And at the same time, because I'm also working in close, now all of a sudden the two structures are transitioning in together in a very seamless way. And with the defense built in, and that you're taking the initiative with the defense built in, it allows an ordinary person to stay centered, even in a situation of maximum adrenaline.
He's got a plan, he's got a purpose. Yeah, Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts, being from the background that you are.
I'd like to explore that. It also reminds me a little bit of what Pac Vic the Thoris taught me, a little bit about shanking from the rear and covering my face and my neck. Now you're talking about fighting in a phone booth. I mean, I think all of these structures are gonna link.
Yeah.
So,
Let me jump in for 1 second there. I'm sorry, Mike. Just on that very point, because my background, I'm a CSW guy. So from the grappling, once again, you don't want these out. These are levers. I love where you're going with this, and where Mark's going with it, with his structures. It's the same thing. You're creating frames. You're framing, but you're doing it in a knife context. I love it. You do have consistency across categories. This is great.
And I should add, the first night, the Thursday night, is going to be Guru Ryan and me working on mixing weaponry and grappling. Be it, I think with us it'll be stick and or knife, whereas with Lloyd and me it's going to be knife, and Mike in his sections he's doing his real context stick fighting. Let's not leave that out. He's there's going to be a whole bunch of good old dog brother stick fighting the Dogzilla way.
Right on.
I would like to teach Espati Daga, Filipino style, bilaterally in both leads, but primarily I'm going to be teaching double stick. I'm going to teach people how to move. And so there's going to be some curriculums that are going to happen with two weapons, primarily, is going to be my focus for 3 days.
Love it. I love the pad work you did with the stick and pad work, where you guys are integrating that. I saw some of those videos. That's nice.
That's a bid lesson for the association, yes?
Yes. Didn't mean to sneak that in. I literally do admire it, though.
Cool. We have subsections that I like to call, from Dog Brother Martial Arts, I like to describe it as Dog Brother Combatives, because a lot of military people came through here in Hawaii, and we were teaching people from the Army and the Navy and the Marines primarily. And so we had to simplify the structures and make it more lethal, as opposed to there was times when we were taking things from martial arts that could be more for like sport and killing. So we've been having to train people to kill and to fight. I believe I'm coming to train people to learn how to move for Dog Brothers real contact stick fighting, which is what I've been focusing on. My expertise isn't, rapid transient weapon craft. I'm coming to learn that.
Right.
So I have some things to teach, and I have some things I want to learn. So for me, it's a win-win situation to come to this camp.
Yeah, also I should mention and announce now that Sled Dog, Philip Jelinas, is going to be attending the camp.
What? Awesome.
Yes.
Surprise.
Yes. Let's see, I think he's the number 2, the highest ranked person in Pekiti Tersh after Grand Tuangaki himself. Philip's a funny guy, there was Tuhan and then Grand Tuhan, and so his joke was wonton, Tuhan, and 3 Han, But, so obviously, there's a tremendous background in knife there. So in the natural fluidity of good friends, you hear, Mike, Phil, and I, all three original Dog Brothers there, and got Lloyd bringing in his thing, and this is the 5th year of the camp. People are comfortable there. There're going to be a lot of repeat players. A lot of people have been there before. We got a lot of people who I'm coming next year, and they're there every year because they know what it is. And so there's a lot of good, sharing and energy and friendship, and it's going to be a very good time.
Right.
Wonderful. Awesome. So just remember, I don't think we've said it yet, dogbrothers.com. If anybody hasn't seen one of these yet, I'll have the links available to everybody. Don't miss it. Really, this is shaping up to be pretty cool.
Yeah, June 6th is going to it's Guru Ryan's jiu-jitsu class at 6:30 in the evening, and then it's 3 full days for the 7th, 8th, and 9th. And if you can't make it the Thursday night, of course, no worries. Just it's available for you if you can make it.
And this is a wonderful facility too. Ryan's school is great.
Yeah, and for people who are budget conscious, you can sleep on the mat. We have people who do that. It's a very pleasant area. It's a beautiful time of year. There's lots of green. It's good. And so, some people may be like, oh, Central PA, how do I get there? You fly into Philly or Pittsburgh, or in my case, I'm going to be flying into Washington, D.C. because I'm doing a presentation with the Secret Service. And so in terms of the logistics of my ticket, that makes sense, and I'll drive up. But, basically from Philly or Pittsburgh, it's like this little, 30-minute flight additional after you get in from there. And they'll be quite, people will pick you, someone will pick you up at the airport, it'll coordinate. And, Ryan is, he's all on top of that.
It would not be a terrible time to sit across a table from this group of guys and just have conversations about this stuff. It's a pretty good opportunity. What's that?
Are you going to make it?
I'm considering it.
Well, what do you mean considering? You're what, Maryland, and you can't make it to Central PA?
I might have to move a few things around in my schedule and volunteer my camera services to get some of this.
Ooh, yeah, I like that.
We'll see. I know I'm putting myself out here in public on this, but
you're hired, Bob.
This is a pretty neat opportunity, and you got some heavy players here.
Yeah, it's Mike and I have been together. When did we start, Mike?
1990.
That's it? I thought it was even in the 80s. 1990.
No.
Okay.
Well, the first time I fought was in 1990. I met you about 3 months prior to that, and it's been quite a journey, Mark.
Yeah, I think you're my second most senior. Lester came along with me after the Vunak years, and and then he introduced you, and so I happened to be reviewing as I was going through clips. I saw that clip of Dogzilla's first day the other day. I was watching that.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
like 29 summers ago.
Yeah, my God.
Time flies. Wow.
Well, in that first series with Mike was the horror show. Like it was like hearing Top Dog talking about, like, if you can't stop this man, squash the bug.
And I have had so many people over the years comment on Mike's demonstration of the prison sewing machine from the Die Less Often DVD. And it's just, I saw that, and it changed my anti-knife training forever. And I have learned so much from Mike over the years. The questions that would come are, sort of a little gentle. You sure about that one? And and
the thing about the first series is they show in the next tape how to deal with a guy with my style. So next thing you know, they show Top Dog whooping my ass and showing you this is what you do when you got a psychopath coming at you with this type of style. We got something for you to learn how to deal with me. So
But look who it took to stop you. It took Top Dog.
Yeah. And,
Well,
and
Top
things
Dog.
evolved, and then I brought the jujitsu, and then Arlen developed the Krabi Krabong, and the game, just keeps evolving. And
three of those
Mike,
guys beat
Mike
me
is
up.
going to be bringing his developments. I'm like, how many years ago was it that I did college two or three? It was 2 that I did out in Hawaii, Mike. How many years ago was that?
Probably 10 or 11 now. I
Yeah.
was living on the other side of the island at the time.
Yeah, and so you had already evolved, and there's a whole serious stick fighting scene there around you in Hawaii, and I'm looking to see what you've developed since then.
Yeah.
We've developed some curriculums over here, Mark.
Yeah, I know that. You shared some footage in the vid lessons for the association, and so this is going to be a rocking good time.
Well,
Yeah.
and he keeps using the key word curriculum, and that is so huge too. It's these systems, because I'm in here training. I want to come away from this with something. Yeah, having the experience is its own thing, and it's wonderful being in the room. But I want to take something away, and I have learned something I can take home with me. And you guys breaking that down like that is very valuable. Like having step by step.
Mark, we mentioned mobility in the previous podcast, and that's something that might be useful, especially after 3 or 4 days of intense training.
Mm-hmm.
Is to do some mobility to help the guys get their bodies ready, minimize the risk of injury, minimize the soreness after training, and to get them better prepared for the next day. So that, especially, I think all of us we're not young gentlemen anymore. None of us are in our 20s. So
now I love actually I wanted to tell you I've been taking a piece of the mobility thing that I learned from you. Everybody knows certain neck things, but you have a couple more in the way they're put together and the whole progression.
Yeah.
You know what a hex bar is? It's where you stand inside it, and like for doing shrugs. It's for weightlifting.
Yeah.
It's called a hex bar. And so what I'm doing now is it's sort of like a farmer's carry or something, except you're in the hex bar. And so I'm there with, I don't weigh it down that heavily, but I'm holding it a long time. And so now I do the neck mobility exercises while I'm holding the weight. And so, this one, and, this and this, and then this and this. And so when I do it while I'm holding the weight, not only is it mobility, but it's strengthening the neck in a very safe way.
Right. Yeah, so I'll be doing some of that, I think, during the seminar as well, helping the guys with their movement, and also showing them where potential movement issues are, asymmetries, helping them correct that, and giving them tips for safer training, better training, less likelihood of injury, faster recovery. I think we'll work on that as well, because I'll need it, especially after 3 intense days. It's always good to, because look, health first, right? We want to be safe.
Yeah,
So,
Dr. G spoke of the 3 H's: hurting, healing, harmonizing. You come into martial arts learning how to hurt, then you learn how to heal your injuries, and then you learn to live in harmony.
Yeah.
Like
I hope that you can have us do some of that before we get started.
Well, I was just about to say prehabilitation, not rehabilitation.
Yes. Being on these airplanes is no joke. I come off these planes, I'm so tight. The last time I fought, I blew a hamstring on the airplane. So then when I went to fight, my second fight, it popped so bad I couldn't continue. And if I would have had something like what you're talking about, doing more of a better warm-up, I probably would have had a better day.
Okay, well, cool. Yeah, so we'll work on the whole movement, because you said you're doing movement, and that made me think, well, I've helped Mark with movement, and I've helped a lot of people with movement. So yeah, it will be great as well for people to walk away with better movement as well.
Yeah, the stuff has been a great use. It's loosened up some things for me, and it's enabled. I feel like I've improved when I start bringing it. There's something there that wasn't there before. So the mobility work's very important. I no longer think in terms of stretching. I now think in terms of mobility.
Right. Yeah, sounds like we're gonna have a good time.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to be the spoiler and come in and say we're hitting our time limit, but I want to say it's been an honor not only to have Lloyd on here for a second time, but Mike Dogzilla Tibbitts. You just did an awesome first podcast. Welcome. I hope you do a whole bunch more with us.
Okay.
Cherry, huh?
I'm not saying that to him. You can. So everybody, dogbrothers.com. Please check this out and go to this camp.
There it is. The adventure continues. Woof, woof.
Cheers, everyone. Till next time.